Well, shall we go ahead and get started?
Sure. I'll go ahead
Okay.
and call the meeting to order.
Thanks, Ruth.
You betcha. Joe, do we have a quorum or do we know yet?
No, it looks like we're one shy.
Okay. Well, we can still consider the minutes. Does anybody have any comments or questions? If
And
not,
Alan
I'm
just
sorry?
joined us. So maybe we
Good.
have a.
Hi, Alan. So maybe we have a quorum now.
Anything that's really
Hello, I'm here now.
or lame that we didn't talk about.
So we call the meeting to order, and if we have a quorum, we can go through and everybody can vote individually, and then we can be sure we have everybody listed who is in attendance.
Ruth, are you looking for a motion first?
I think we would be. I guess I'm still waiting to be sure we have a quorum.
Joe, you're on.
Yes, we have a quorum.
We do. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So, and if there's no comments about the minutes, anybody want to make a motion?
This is Corrine. I would motion that we adopt the minutes.
This is Lonnie. I'll second.
Great. So, why don't this is who I understand is on the call. Ben?
Yep.
Holly?
Here.
Okay.
Yep.
Serge? Serge?
Serge, you're on mute, Serge, if you're trying to
Okay,
communicate.
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Lonnie, I know Lonnie's on. And Alan Eckert? Probably on mute as well.
I'm not
Incorrect.
seeing her anymore.
Okay. So all in favor, I guess we would just say, I guess that's what I was supposed to do, isn't it, Dave?
You got it.
All right. So Ben, yes or no? For the minutes, accepting the minutes?
Yes, can you hear me?
Thank you. Holly?
Okay, sorry. I wasn't, maybe I was on mute.
That's
Yeah.
all right.
Yes, from me.
Thank you. Serge?
I'm just an alternate, but I say yes.
Okay. Well, not just an alternate now. Okay, Lonnie?
Yes.
Okay, I vote yes. Alan?
Alan, you're on mute if you're talking.
I don't see him in the participant list.
Looks like we lost him again.
Okay,
Oh.
Corinne? You
So this
moved
is
it.
Corrine. This is Corrine. I'm a yes.
All right, thank you. So when Alan said yes earlier, so the minutes have been adopted. Do we have any public comment that we need to have shared?
No public comment.
No public comment, okay. Well, we'll move on with the agenda then. Dave, Streets for People Engagement Report.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and use video. It's just a little easier, I think, for me anyway, to see what's going on. Don't feel pressure if you don't want to. This committee is pretty well aware of the Streets for People project, if you've been with us for the last couple meetings. So we put in place a pilot project called Tigard Streets for People as a pandemic response to support active transportation in the central city, basically connecting neighborhoods to the trail system. Pathfinder Genesis Trail and the Fano Creek Trail over off of Johnson and Grant Streets. So part of the project included a public engagement component, and I'll just pause for a second. If you're not talking, please try to mute your phones. You can hear you eating your salad. Part of the project was putting together this public engagement component. And what we did for public engagement is we had JLA, which is a local consulting firm, helping us on a small contract to reach out to neighbors, to trail users, and then also to manage some of the input we're receiving through our web survey. And I think several of you probably used the web survey to provide feedback on the project. We shared that with you last month. And I just got back today their draft engagement report. So I thought I would run through that with you and just share some of the highlights. So I'm going to try to share my screen. And Joe sent out the PDF just a few minutes ago. So you should have a copy of that as well. Oh, I closed it. I'm going to reopen it. Here it is. Okay. So just some highlights, and you feel free to read through this on your own here. This gives a summary of the type of engagement we conducted, the results of intercept surveys. So the consultant went out 2 days on July 13th and July 17th, and they did counts of people using this segment of street here. And I believe they were positioned at sort of the intersection of Johnson and Grant. And so they did counts, and then they were able to speak to 14 people total while they were out there. And obviously you can understand there's probably a little bit of a challenge right now during a pandemic. People don't really want to talk to strangers out on the street, even if you are equipped with face masks and whatnot. But they were able to talk to some people, and the results are here. And you can see that most people were walking. Most people lived in the neighborhood, but quite a few people lived further away outside of the neighborhood. Let's see, most people here on average, people ranked their experience typically at like 4 out of 5, which is generally positive. They thought that it does help make Tigard a more livable community. We also asked people where they would like to see expansion of the pilot if we did more streets. And here are some of the potential locations that we heard from people. So Fauner, Greenberg, Pathfinder, connections to Dirksen Park, connections to the library, those sorts of things, or places. Scrolling down, then we had the online survey up from June 26th to August 2nd, and we had a total of 31 responses. And most people, again, as you can see, experienced it while walking, about half as many biking, and then another fraction here who are driving through the area. Overall, it seemed like most people had a positive experience with the pilot program, although we did have 3 people who rated it at, they said that they were unsatisfied or very unsatisfied by the program. If I recall some of the comments that I saw there, it seemed like one of the comments that was negative suggested that they just didn't see any need for it, and they thought that pedestrians shouldn't be in the street anyway. So that was, but that was just one person who felt that way. But we did get some really good comments. People liked the traffic calming impact. They appreciated that it's safer and more calm. And we also heard a desire for having permanent traffic calming features like this on Tigard streets. Again, we got more feedback on where additional locations would be beneficial. So essentially what we'll do with this engagement report is take this and we'll be combining this with another slide that I want to show you here, and that's this equity analysis. Oh shoot! Can you guys still see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
I'm having some error messages, and sometimes my
Yes.
computer crashes. So I'm just gonna keep going here, and I'm trying to zoom out. Can I zoom? Oh, here we go. Okay, so in consideration of expanding the program, we'll take the engagement report that we have now, once that's finalized, and we're going to use that with this transportation equity analysis to try to determine where we might expand the program if there's a desire to do so. So this is kind of an interesting piece of work that we've taken on here. And this is something I've been working with our GIS teams to put together. This is a tool that could be used beyond this pilot program. In fact, I think we'll very likely be using this for some other work that we're doing, including the transportation system plan update. But this, what you're seeing on the screen here is identification of census tracts that would be considered transportation equity needs areas. And these are based off of American Community Survey census data. And we've used 8 variables to plug into this analysis, and they include such data as low income, English proficiency, or low English proficiency specifically, transit dependency. It includes population density or housing density, and a number, and senior population, as well as a few other variables. And essentially what that's telling us is where we have some of the greatest transportation needs in terms of underserved or potentially marginalized communities. And so the dark purple are some of those higher needs areas, and it's interesting to see where those are in our city. So that's just kind of my recap of the engagement on the project and how we might determine if we do expand this. We'll likely be bringing this back to the transportation strategy team to review it with them and then determine if we want to expand it. So I think with that, I'd open up to Q&A and discussion, and I'd love to hear back from anybody who's been out there and just give us your feedback. I know Lonnie had some comments before we started the meeting, so it'd be great if he could share those again.
Sure. So I've actually modified my routine from my house on Walnut Street. I used to go up to Grant and then down Grant behind on Johnson, and then behind the George Moreland Plumbing. But I've changed to go through the trail there right off Walnut Street, and that leads us into the neighborhood back there, and then follow that to the Fano Creek Trail into the transit center on my bike every day, and then back the same way. It's very nice. It's very peaceful. Going up Walnut Street was sometimes challenging to get across the street. It isn't so much anymore. People are nice, but to have the area such as the back there on Johnson Street and what have you, certainly makes me a lot more confident to and comfortable to ride through that area. I for one would like to see it expanded so that other people can enjoy the safety that I am.
Thanks, Lonnie. Anybody else want to provide any comments? And be sure to unmute yourself if you want to speak.
Yeah, Council President Goodhouse, I was going to just prod you, Dave, if you wanted to mention the conference call you did the other day with, I'm on the Transportation and Infrastructure Subcommittee for the National League of Cities. And we had a discussion that kind of the conference call for a monthly call was on topics like this. So Dave got to do a little bit of a presentation for that to all the members, and they use that information at the United States Department of Transportation conference as well. So if you want to just maybe briefly mention that, or I kind of already did, but from talking to the committee and stuff, this is kind of something that's not really being done around the United States. So this is kind of a cool project that we're doing here, but also getting national attention as well.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you brought that up, Council President Goodhouse. And just so everybody here knows, so Council President Goodhouse sits on the National League of Cities Transportation Subcommittee, and it's a great opportunity for us to share some of the things that we're doing, and then also for us to be able to have some influence over the type of conversations that are happening back in DC in terms of transportation and what we can, communicate that would benefit us back here in Tigard.
So Alan here, I put my headphones on? Can you hear me? I just want to make sure.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Thank you. So I want to kind of second some comments about Walnut there. There usually is pretty easy to cross at that point from what I've seen, but there have been a few instances of near misses that I've seen, and from one person to see multiple near misses at this one site is concerning. So that would just be a comment for focus of if you consider continuing programming within Johnson Street, that Walnut Creek connector, to cross the street there across Walnut could be a more used path and might need some additional review just to make sure that people on the other side in that other area can get the full use of that project on the other side.
Thanks, Alan. That's really good feedback, and I think that's maybe one of the challenges with this type of kind of pop-up installation that we're doing here is that we don't have great tools to deal with busy crossings like that. And I'm quite familiar with that location. It's something that we've talked about with the Safe Routes to School program a couple of times. And I think as we get a little further into this work, it's possible that we could find some like temporary solutions that could help with street crossings. But I think the more likely outcome would be that we just work to prioritize those crossings for small capital projects to really improve them for the long run. And hold that thought, because I'm going to share some of the recent RRFB crossings that we've installed around the city, because that would be a good location for something like that.
I was just wondering why there wasn't one there.
Yep.
Is that the crossing on Walnut that goes over to the Dairy Dell?
Yeah, at the Pathfinder Court there.
The marked crosswalk. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I crossed that. That's probably one of the crosswalks I've used the most, and I most drivers are pretty, but yeah, you do have to be alert because there are just a couple, and those couple can be dangerous. The couple cars that don't look like they're going to give right away. So
Well, it's not that. I think I've seen people with just near misses of hitting the cars that are stopping at the crosswalk too.
Oh yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, that's the other side of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Correct. I think that, I'm sure Dave is going to cover this, but one of those flashing lights would be, I don't understand why there isn't one there, except for there's 1/4 of a mile up the street at the other intersection on Johnson. And so maybe there's some issue on how many you can have in a certain amount of space. I don't know.
There's no hard and fast rule on spacing those out, but we do have to use good engineering judgment on those types of questions. So, but like I said, it is something that's come up, and we've identified it through the Safe Routes to School program as a crossing need. And so what you'd likely see there is, there's a marked crosswalk, but there's not a lot for additional signage, and there's no flashing lights. So we'd probably do something along those lines at that location when we can find the money for it.
Dave, this is Green.
Yeah.
Could you put up on the screen the map with the the routes
Yes.
and equity analysis again?
Definitely. Let me share my screen one more time here.
I just found that to be so fascinating. It did seem like, we do have like a concentration of trails that are not in the purple area, which is where maybe there's the highest need for having safe, accessible transportation options. And I'm wondering, you said we might be using something like this in the future. Could you elaborate on that a little bit? Like, what kinds of things might happen based on an equity analysis like this, and kind of what things could TTAC members do to, improve the situation? Or do you share a need for improvement here? Am I a little off base? I don't know. I'm looking at these colors. It's on a small screen. It's a little hard to tell.
Yeah. Well, so I can share this with you so you can see the file and you can take a closer look at it. And I'll start by saying that this tool was initially, we started working on this internally before I arrived at the city, and it's based off of some early work that was done looking specifically at sidewalk infill needs when we were talking about potentially doing a sidewalk infill program citywide. And when that sort of stalled out, this work was put on pause, or just kind of sat on a shelf for a while. But it was really clear to us when we were doing the Streets for People pilot program that equity in transportation, along with all things that we're considering right now, is really has to lead these conversations and really lead the type of work that we're doing when we're determining where to make investments in the community. And so the map that you're seeing on the screen right now has these two additional layers. They're the bottom two lines on the key or the legend there. So one is the 3/8 of a mile buffer from the major trails, and then the yellow lines are all the trails within Tigard. So those two additional items or specifically for Streets for People. And the 3/8 of a mile came from our strategic vision, which suggests that every household be within 3/8 of a mile of a trail. So this is specifically for Streets for People, but your question was what else might we use this for? And so I can give you an example just of a conversation we were having today. And that was that we have a new ADA transition plan for the city that's been adopted. And one component of that ADA transition plan is an inventory of all the ADA deficiencies that we have citywide. And this is a similar situation for every city, is that we have a lot of them. In fact, we have such a long list that it would take something like 30 years to build all the improvements. So we have to start somewhere with working on those projects. And I think you might remember that for our ADA plan, we now have a line item in our capital improvement program of $400,000 a year to put towards essentially building new curb ramps citywide. So we have this pot of money, and we have to determine where we're going to do those improvements. And this map was shared with the staff team today to make sure that this type of analysis is done to tell us where to start programming those funds. So that's one use. And then the other use will be when we get into the transportation system plan, we will be using equity and climate change as two of the real key tools to measure like to develop our framework for analyzing potential projects for the future. So those are a couple of examples. And then I guess your last question was what role does TTAC have, or is there anything that TTAC can do to help with this? I think it could be helpful for the city to hear from TTAC on, you know, what we're thinking about in terms of using these types of tools or this type of analysis to prioritize transportation projects. And I think one of the interesting outcomes here could be, you know, when TTAC does its every other year CIP prioritization, that rather than, you know, what we've done in the past, which is like just have it sort of be a popularity contest for projects, to kind of take it to the next level and really use data to drive some of our decision making, whether it's equity issues or traffic safety or whatever. So those are just my initial thoughts on it, and I'd be curious to hear what you think as well.
Well, I would definitely support the city using an equity lens in both, like from the staff perspective in providing information to advisory boards and the council, as well as the council considering that when they make policy decisions. I think that's a really important part of the conversation, especially right now. And I would be definitely a fan of using something like this for the CIP. I know I personally was like looking to, well, what's the safety? And then is it close to a school? I mean, I tried to kind of make my decision not be a popularity contest, but I think if we had more shared metrics where everybody could be on the same page, that could be very helpful.
Can I ask a question, Dave, about this? Can you explain what, again, if I missed it here, what the first 5 colors are and what they mean? Because I see what Corinne means by like seeing gaps. Like one is like Bull Mountain, it looks like a gap, but the other is like down 99. We've got H Mart and all those shops all the way down to Main Street is the dark purple. Is that a gap? I'm not sure what these actually mean to me. So
the color coding here, if you can see, and I'm sorry that the screen is kind of hard to read here, but this is color coding by census block group or census tract, and the color coding is based off of an 8 variable analysis. So those darker purple colors are areas that we would consider to be the most the most transportation need based off of factors like income, poverty rates, senior citizens, transit dependent populations. So the types of people in our community that have a harder time getting around, or they're spending a disproportionate amount of their money on transportation costs and those sorts of things. So the color coding is not in reference to any gaps. It's more of a demographic analysis of different census tracts, if that helps.
Okay, that's very helpful. And just from quick reference to, especially the area on 99, it looks like it's like a little bit more high density housing, so you get more people per square mile, and different incomes are in that area as well, for sure. But thank you very much.
Yeah.
I was actually a little confused by the area up by Summer Lake and Barrows. Was it Barrows? Yeah. I don't see the road, but that purple up there doesn't. It seems like some pretty well established middle class housing and apartments and stuff. So with lots of sidewalks in some of those areas. So that one confused me a bit. The other one I do agree that 99. Yeah. But you know what I mean though? It's up near.
Yeah. Keep in mind, Ben, that it has nothing to do with infrastructure. It's really demographic data.
Okay. Well, it's just interesting. I thought up there, it doesn't. Yeah, it didn't strike me as being neighborhoods that were particularly. I didn't realize it, I guess is my point.
Well, then Ben, you've also got the little business park area that's on the the east side of Hall there too, right by 217.
Well, and if I could ask for a clarifying clarification, it looks like that I know that area pretty well. I ride my bike down Walnut Street to the gym to Shoals Ferry and Murray. There's a lot of housing in there, but there certainly isn't a lot of transportation options. Is that what that's reflective of?
You know, like bus stops and stuff like that?
There's no buses through that area.
Okay.
The color coding here is by census tract, and it's purely demographic. It's not. This has nothing to do with infrastructure.
Sorry, demographic I took I took that differently. I don't know why, but yeah, now I get it. Okay.
And this is from America's survey?
This is so so the American Community Survey is a component of the US Census, and the US Census is taken every 10 years, I believe, and somebody on here is probably going to correct me, but I think the ACS is every 3 years. I'm not 100% sure on that.
I thought it was a little more frequent than that, but I could be wrong.
It might be a little more frequent.
I do understand the differences of them, and I've used that data for a couple of things myself.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to read it. Do we have the data backing this? Or is what I was wondering. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Gotcha.
This is Corinne. The American Community Survey is conducted every year. However, it is like a spot survey. It is not a comprehensive survey the way the census data is intended to be, where it counts everybody. So sample households are chosen randomly. And then when you look at the American Community Survey data, it's usually aggregated to be like a collection of data collected over the past 3 years or the past 5 years to address the fact that it's not collected comprehensively. And so that will reduce your sampling margin rate. So it's not probably the best possible data, but you can't conduct a comprehensive census survey every single year. So it's a way of getting around that. And so you'll typically see like, this is American Community Survey data from 2010 to 2013, or from 2015 to 2018, I think is the most recent one that they've crunched the numbers on. So there's always a lag time between collecting the data and having it available as well. So, I mean, we won't see the 2020 census data coming out until maybe sometime in 2021, but us might be 2022 for all we know. So there's always going to be a little bit of error. And I think, Dave, too, you made the point that it's
Korean, you kind of broke up there. Are you still there?
Oh, lost you, Corinne.
Well, while she's joining back up, this is Ben. I was just curious. I guess maybe I don't understand. You're probably not going to be able to explain it to me in a way that could be understood on this call. So I just wondered, like, is there some place that just highlights what goes into that color coding and whatever aggregation they're using?
Yeah, I think, Ben, what I'm learning from this conversation is that it could be valuable to bring our GIS staff, somebody from the GIS staff, to come and give a more thorough presentation on this, and they can explain the types of variables that we used and the data behind it. So like I said, again, it's an 8 variable. So you're looking at 8 data sources, or not sources, but 8 pieces of data here. It's transit dependency, it's low English proficiency, it's senior citizen population, it's poverty rate. It's those sorts of data points from the census data. So it's
Okay.
demographic data, and basically the greater the number, the closer, or 25 and above, those dark purple areas are the areas that would be considered to have the most transportation need based off of those.
Right. So the takeaway, the idea is that this could possibly factor in like locality to schools or other places where people would travel to or from. This would help us make some decisions about where we want to focus our efforts. Transportation, is that kind of the idea? Like,
yeah,
that's
okay.
Okay.
Right. So you would ideally, to have more equitable outcomes of where you're investing your limited transportation dollars, you're focusing on those areas with populations that are the neediest population.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's fair. Thanks. I don't know why I didn't follow it at first. Maybe I'm not the only one. Maybe I am, but no, that makes better sense to me. Thank you.
Yeah. I think what I'll do is we'll have a meeting, and I'll at one of our next meetings, and I'll have the GIS staff come, and they're actually working on a presentation on this body of work for our leadership team at the city. And I think as soon as they have that done and ready to go, then I think I'd invite them to share it with TTAC, because it is really interesting and something that you guys should be tracking.
Yeah, even if it's just a slide deck, if they can't make it, that might help out. Yeah. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Hey Dave, this is actually something I've been looking for a little while now too, but I think this would be very helpful when we're setting goals and metrics for the Complete Streets program as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep.
Agreed. So I think if we're ready, we could probably move to the next topic, unless there's any last questions or comments about the Streets for People pilot. Okay, I think maybe we'll go on. Ruth, what's our next topic?
The next topic is the Downtown Reimagine.
Great.
TGM grant.
Okay, so I'll cover this one as well. And so I wanted to share this with TTAC because Ruth provided a letter of support for a grant from TTAC, and Joe has sent that out to you, so you have a copy of that in your email. I think what I'll do is I'll share my screen again, and I'll just take you to the grant page. So if you're interested, you can always get more information here. So share this one more time. Okay. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to highlight something here. So just quickly, so TGM is the Transportation and Growth Management Program, which is essentially, it's an organization, governmental organization that is combined, that's basically the Department of Land Conservation and Development, the DLCD, who's in charge of all of our statewide land use and transportation goals, planning goals, and ODOT, and the Oregon Department of Transportation. And so combined, they have this program called TGM. And TGM's mission, they provide a lot of white papers on transportation and land use issues, a lot of interesting stuff if you ever want to dig into this stuff, available through TGM and DLCD. But they also are a funding source to do planning work around the state. And so the City of Tigard has been successful in the past in getting TGM planning grants. The last one we received was for the Tigard Triangle plan, and the one and we also used one for the Tigard Greenways master plan. There's a trails master plan for the City of Tigard, and it also supported our last transportation system plan. So it's been a few years since we've gone after one of these grants, but we decided to go after a grant this round to support a renewed downtown vision that incorporates transit-oriented development concepts, and as well as a new Hall Boulevard corridor plan for the downtown area. So we've applied for this grant. The application went in on July 31st, and we included a letter of support from TTAC. So you have that in front of you, so you can read it. And I'll scroll down. If you can access this webpage if you are interested in learning more of the details and seeing our grant application under their 2020 grant applications. And you can see in this list, there's quite a bit of competition, probably 20 something applications this round, but we feel like we're pretty well positioned to be successful for this. So I'm just going to share with you the kind of the project purpose here, and then you're welcome to dig into this on your own time if you'd like to. So summary of the project. So this project will modernize the city's approach to development, transportation, and equity. The project will result in zoning and development code amendments, a multimodal corridor plan, and a new multimodal mixed-use area designation. So this is for the downtown area to think more inclusively of what it would be like to have a light rail station adjacent to our downtown, and then consider potential expansion of our downtown boundaries to encapsulate that light rail station. So do you have any questions, or do you want to talk about this a little bit more? I'm happy to answer any questions you might have on this project.
How many grants did they give out?
I'm trying to remember how much money it's an amount available for the 2020 rounds. And they might say here, how to apply, let's see. You know, I can't recall the exact amount, but I think our project, I think we're asking for about $250,000, if I remember correctly. Definitely not all of those applications will be successful. There's a lot of them this round.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Dave, this is Corinne.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, this is very much like one of those situations where land use and transportation are really integrated, but we also have a town center advisory commission. Do you have any kind of sense, if this project moves forward, how this group might be involved and what kind of role we'd play?
That's a good question. You know, like you said, this is the project that we proposed is really like it's just the perfect land use and transportation project, and that's why we feel pretty confident that TJM will support our ask, because it's the type of project that they really like to see. You know, with a project like this, there will be a pretty significant public engagement component, and I see both TTAC and the TCAC, our Town Center Advisory Commission, as being key to that engagement and helping shape the project. So I would anticipate that both committees would be involved in helping set up the engagement strategies that we use, and then also providing input to the staff and consultant teams on the projects.
Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions? I think it could be useful if we send the link out to this application so you can read through it if you'd like to. get a little more knowledge about the project.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great idea.
Okay, we'll do that. Okay, if there's no other comments or questions, I think we can probably move to the next item.
Actually,
Okay.
Dave, I do have another
Oh.
question.
Yeah, for sure.
If we don't get funded, is there, you know, an alternative strategy, or is it just come back next year?
You know, I think we have some critical questions that we have to answer because of the Southwest Corridor project coming through Tigard. And some of those questions, a lot of the big ones are focused around the Hall Boulevard station. And so regardless of whether or not we get this project, we will have to do the planning work necessary. It's possible that it would take longer if we were not successful. It's also possible that some decisions might get deferred. And I would say that's probably the main risk, is that things just take longer. But there are some key things that need to happen when the project comes in, and permitting is sort of our one control lever that we have over the project when it comes time to for TriMet to get their permits. And we need to have some of our development code updates in place before that happens. And so we'd have to be a little bit more targeted and surgical with what we do with that stuff, just because we won't have the level of resources that this project would bring.
Well, it sounds like it's really important that we get it. And I just want to say thank you to Ruth for writing a great letter on our behalf. Sounds like that was probably a really important thing to do. So thanks, Ruth.
Oh, yeah. All I did was sign it, but you're welcome.
Thanks, Ruth. And just as an FYI, the TCAC also provided a letter of support for the project. Okay, well, I think we're ready to maybe move on to the next item.
Yeah, Dave, I presume you talked with Richard.
I did, yep.
He's not on the call, so you get to keep talking. So this was about the TTAC, the TTAC Self-Guided Project Tour.
Good, yeah, okay. Can you still see my screen?
Yes, I can.
All right. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. There we go. Yeah, so Richard and I have been communicating on this, and we're hoping to have this ready to go for this meeting, but it's taking us a little bit longer to get it put together. But I think that's fine. I think we want to have a good, solid group of projects and the right level of information to share with you when you do head out on your self-guided tour. So I wanted to run through at least the project list that we have on here, and then open it up to the group. If there's anything that you know about or are curious about that you don't see on this list, I think we can probably add it in. But here are 10 locations that we're going to include for the self-guided tour. So number one is 121st Avenue between Whistler and Tippett, so just south of Walnut. This is the project it's at a 90% design right now, and it will be a complete transformation of the roadway to include sidewalks and bike lanes and new improved pedestrian crossings. The next one is Main Street, Green Street, Phase 2. And this is one we talked about last month with Christy and Andrew, who were on the call with us. And I'm hoping, this is one I'd love you all to go out and look at and get your feedback on. And so we can provide that to the project team. And they'll definitely be back to hear from you again once they're a little further along with the project. The next one is Fruing Street sidewalks. So
Dave,
this is one.
Sorry,
Oh yeah.
can I pause you on that one?
Yep.
I know that what we saw last week wasn't necessarily publicly announced or like publicly available or whatnot. Is there something that we can get as a reference for if we do go and actually look through that area, the what might be,
Oh
even
yeah.
if it's not a definitive?
I should clarify. So what Richard and I are putting together is like a packet for you with detailed project information, so that when you go out, you will have that info to reference.
I apologize for asking the question. This was covered at the last meeting. I wasn't there. This is a fantastic idea. Do you have any idea when this packet will be available so that we can do this?
It should be available within the next couple weeks.
And
Yeah,
then Dave,
and then I think, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, this is Ruth. Will that packet include kind of a check sheet or an evaluation sheet or something to request feedback? Maybe just a summary of what you would like us to.
I think where it's on the projects where we're in the right, I guess, moment in the project to get that type of feedback, certainly we would ask for it and have that opportunity for you. So like Main Street, Green Street is a really good example of that, where when we get this packet out to you, it will be really good timing for you to provide feedback. Some of the other ones are more information only.
Great. Okay.
So yeah.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
So yeah, no problem. So the next one is Fruing Street. So this is a grant funded project to put sidewalk and rebuild part of the roadway on Fruing Street off of Highway 99. The next one is the Southwest Corridor light rail station areas. And I have a note here to focus on the Hall Station area, because I think that's the most important one for us right now to be considering, although we can include more information about all of the station areas. It's just kind of a lot of ground to cover. That's a tour in itself.
When you say station areas, is there more than one, or more than just the two, the one that currently exists and then the one on Hull Boulevard? Is there another one that they're thinking about? 5 stations in Tigard. Oh, yeah. I guess I'm confused with the maintenance yard.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so that's tied with Hall there. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Exactly. You got it.
I'm aware of the 5. Yeah,
I figured you would be, Lonnie. Okay, the next one on the list is the Fano Creek Trail improvements, and this list is from an email that I sent to Richard, so this has some of my notes to him. The next one are the North Dakota and Tigard Street bridges that are going to be replaced. Both of these would be good to have feedback from you because they're of their proximity to other transportation facilities, such as the Fano Creek Trail and some sort of complicated intersections on the east side where they tie into Tiedemann and Greenberg. Shoals Ferry undercrossing, Fano Creek Trail. The Tigard Street Heritage Trail, since that just opened up, we thought that might be an interesting one if you haven't had a chance to look at it yet. The Commercial Street sidewalks over there. And then the 72nd Avenue design concept, if you hadn't had a chance to go out there and look at it. 72nd Avenue is interesting right now because we are seeing quite a bit of development activity. And now that we have the new plan in place, these developments will be building out the infrastructure that we've laid out in the plan. So this is a list of 10 locations, and I'm happy to hear if you have any suggested edits or additions that you'd like to take a look at while you're out there as well.
I have one for Shoals, is just south of the Shoals Fano Creek undercrossing is the Chip Trail bypass trail.
Yes. I have an update for you on that. That's getting paved within the next few weeks.
Yes.
Where is that?
It's off Ironwood, I think.
It's just below the Shoals Ferry underpass where the creek floods up, and people would have to walk around anyways. And finally, a chip trail was added to make it a little bit easier to walk across the muck. But it's really nice that it's actually being just redirected.
Okay. I'm with you. Thank you.
But that won't stop the water from flooding it, right?
Well, it's out of the flood zone, I think. It'll still flood the old trail. I think they'll probably end up removing the old trail.
That goes under the bridge?
Well, no, so this is, so we're talking about a little further south, if you're familiar.
Okay.
There's like a little chipped bypass
Yes,
for when it's flooded. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I rode my bike on that recently.
Yeah.
For the whole, for the trail that goes under, the path that goes under the shoals, there is a whole, isn't there some listening groups are going on that? And there's plans to do a single crossing over the top of shoals for when it floods.
Yeah, that's a good segue. So for our next item, Roz is going to talk about, oh, go ahead.
And I have a question on trails. I had a resident ask me, I think it's when you're going into Cook Park, when you're coming off of where Hall Boulevard kind of stops right by the sewage treatment plant, goes down. There's kind of a man-made trail of people cutting through there. Is that anything that's any plans in the future to have anything done with that trail?
It's my understanding
There is.
that is, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
there is a plan for that, and this is probably a good time to talk about our agenda for next month. So next month we'll have the Fano Creek team coming to present all things Fano Creek to TTAC. So there's just so much going on with Fano Creek Trail. It's actually really cool to see all of the planning and investment that's going into it right now. And it's kind of hard, to be honest, to keep track of everything that's going on with Fano Creek. So we've invited the staff team to come present to TTAC and take some feedback from you next month.
Is that, the heck is Carla Stater on there?
Yeah, Carla and Zach
Gotcha.
will be joining. Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I just have to ask a little bit more about the Fano Creek Trail improvements. Yeah. So there was a walk when a couple of years ago where we walked through that field out there, Bonita Road off of that park and through that trail and to cross over by the library book depot. That's still part of the Fano Creek Trail project, correct?
It is, yeah. In that section, it's programmed to be built.
Okay.
I can't tell you the timing of that off the top of my head, but that one it's in the works right now.
So I guess I'll reach out to Carla and Zach maybe, because originally I was serving on that committee and nothing has happened or invitation has happened to rejoin or re-engage members, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not sure what their plan was for engagement, but yeah, feel free to reach out, or they'll be here. They'll be here for our September meeting to present to us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any other areas that they would like to include on this list? It's a pretty good list, I think. Covers a lot of different areas in the city. And once we have our packets, once we have our packets, maybe, we could say I'm going out on such and such a date if anybody else wants to come or whatever.
I actually think the Fano Creek crossing across Tiedemann would be a good one to check out now that work has been done on that. So
yeah, that one is finished now. Yeah. We can add that to the, here it is. Number 5 will include that one. Okay, should we go on to the next topic?
Well, I think we've done pretty well. The next is information sharing. So do we have updates from committee members?
I got nothing.
And I've got some updates as well, so I can share those if people want me to.
That'd be great.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Awesome. Can you still see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So, all right. So this is my list for sharing with TTAC. So I wanted to give you some updates and kind of give you a preview of what's to come here. So on the transportation system plan, we've been talking about it for a while, and finally, as of Monday, we've given the consultant their notice to proceed, and so we'll be kicking off the project in late August with the staff team internally, and then I'm really excited to get this going. This is a big deal for Tigard. It's a planning effort that's only done about every decade, and it really helps set our priorities for transportation for the city going forward for the next decade. So this will be a fun project to be involved with, and we'll keep TTAC really close on this one as we go forward. The next item on my info share is that we've just finished up or virtually finished up the new pedestrian crossing improvements at Catherine Street and Tigard Street, Grant Avenue and Tigard Street, and Tiedemann and Fano Creek. So these are all really good examples of the type of crossing improvements that we'd like to see at high demand or high need areas. And we're talking about Walnut and Darrydale Pathfinder area previously. If you want to go out and see the type of improvements that we would like to put in there, these are good examples. It sounds like some of you might have already seen some of these out there. I haven't been out since they've been installed yet, but I'd like to go check them out. Maybe over the weekend I'll go look at them.
Yeah, actually, I got a chance to stop for one. Some pedestrians used to cross over to the Heritage Trail across Tigard Street.
Yeah.
For me today, I was like, I didn't know the lights were there, so I got to see them in action, and it worked great. Yep.
Oh, good. That's good to hear. Yeah. Just a note, I guess, on the Tiedemann and Fano crossing, one of the project details that you probably can't really tell right now or can't see so much is that we designed those curb bump outs to allow for completing the bike lanes on Tiedemann at a future date. So I think some people who cycle through there are probably familiar that the southbound direction is missing a bike lane. And at some point in the future, we'd like to bring that back. And so the distance between those two curbs allows for bike lanes and travel lanes at that location. I already mentioned 121st Avenue, so we're at 90% design. I'd like to bring our project manager back at a future meeting to share this with you. It's pretty exciting. It's going to be a transformative project for 121st, really improve the nature of that street to make it a lot safer. The next one on my list is 97th Avenue striping, and I have a photo I wanted to share with you here. See if I can go to full screen. There we go. So this is 97th Avenue approaching McDonald Street. And so we're traveling north here. And this is the new striping configuration that's on the street. And we worked really closely with our public works partners to modify the street striping so that we're able to continue this bike lane up until the turn lane, where previously there was no bike lane at this location. And then we've installed shared lane markings at the turn lane to let drivers know that this is a place that's shared for bikes and autos. So these are the types of changes that we want to implement with our pavement management program going forward. So really looking for some of these cheap and easy opportunistic updates that have a big impact on the safety and comfort for all road users. The next project is 79th Avenue between Bonita and Durham. This is right by, well, it's pretty close to the high school and Durham Elementary, and 79th, it looks like we're going to be entering into a redesign process, and we'll have staff bring this to TTAC to get your feedback on it here in the next, probably sometime within the next 3 months or so. But we're looking at opportunities to add bike lanes to 79th and do some other safety treatments on that road. And it should be a pretty fun project to work on as well. Next ones are Tigard Street and North Dakota Street bridges. These are sort of starting to line up in terms of schedule, but they can't happen at exactly the same time. But we're working with ODOT on the North Dakota Street Bridge, and then we're doing the Tigard Street Bridge in-house with CIP funding. And right now we're working on trying to understand the size of the bridge, particularly for Tigard Street, how many lanes we need to have on the bridge, and how we'll accommodate bikes and pedestrians on that bridge. Those projects are still a few years out from being constructed, but we are going into design work right now. The next one I wanted to mention, actually the next two here, the Parks Master Plan and the Fana Creek Regional Trail. These are two items that I'd like to propose that we have for our agenda for next month. The City of Tigard is in the middle of doing a Parks Master Plan update, and there's definitely some elements of a Parks Master Plan that interact with transportation, particularly when you have trails and paths running through parks. And we have quite a few instances of those. So I think this is a good opportunity for TTAC to provide input on that project. And then likewise, the Fano Creek Trail, there's so much going on right now that we think it'd be great if the project managers could come speak with TTAC and get your feedback on some of the different pieces of work that are happening right now. The next on the list is Southwest Corridor. So we're entering into the final environmental impact statement work. The conceptual design report is just about ready to be released. And then they're also approaching the 30% design milestone on the project. So 30% design is maybe about a third of the way through the engineering design. And it's a pretty big milestone. So we're paying really close attention to make sure that it includes the details that we would like to see in it. Just as a heads up, there's a community advisory committee meeting tomorrow, and Lindsay Wise sits on that advisory committee. Lonnie has sat on it previously, and it's the first meeting they've had in a while. They've been trying to adjust for COVID impacts. So I'll be curious to hear how that meeting goes.
I am going to do my darndest to hit that meeting tomorrow because it's a virtual meeting, and the schedule that kept me from going to that, serving on that for another year is no longer happening because of COVID. So I might be able to attend it tomorrow.
Yeah, Lonnie, thanks for making that comment. And by all means, if folks are interested, these are meetings that are open to the public. And since they are online now, it's pretty easy to attend them from home. So if you'd like, we can send you the information for that and you can sit in. Happy to do that. On the Southwest Corridor, I wanted to get this in front of the whole committee. We will be asking TTAC if there's interest in providing a letter to the project. And I've been talking to Sean Fairley, who's our who manages our Town Center Advisory Commission, and the TCAC is has been interested in submitting a letter specifically around the Hall Boulevard and downtown station area. So it sounds like they're going to be moving forward with a letter in the next week or two. And I thought I'd open it up to TTAC if you're interested in submitting a letter to the project. Now is a good time to do that if there's any issues that you want to highlight or support or whatever. So is there interest in the committee in doing that? And then I guess I would ask if there's anyone who would like to help lead that effort. And I was sort of thinking that Lindsay or Lonnie, since you've been so involved in the project, might be interested in that. But I don't know that Lindsay's with us tonight.
I am here. I arrived late.
Oh, sure.
I'm here.
Hey. Well,
Hi.
So any interest in helping put together a letter?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll be happy to elaborate with you, Lindsay. I've been absent from the committee for almost a year, so I don't feel I'm qualified to lead the effort, but I'd be happy to, from my experience and the memory of it, collaborate on that with you.
Yeah, I'd be really happy if this committee put in a letter. I have made several comments about this station, and I know we've heard from our council members and other members of Tigard, City of Tigard staff that, you know, this is still a problem, and I haven't seen any movement from our meetings. So I think the more letters, the better.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I'll follow up with the two of you and likely Ruth after this meeting via email, and we'll start putting something together that you could submit on behalf of TTAC.
Great, I'd be glad to sign it.
Okay.
And Lindsay, I think if I could just throw this out there, it seems to me the thing that I remember being the biggest issue here was the safety of crossing from Hall Boulevard from the existing trail that comes from the downtown area. Is that still a concern? And because there has been no movement on that?
That is one of the concerns. There's also a lot of people are wondering about the park and ride there. And I was curious about just placemaking and like how it's going to look. Like on paper right now, it's mostly the big, whatever they call that.
Operation and maintenance
Yes.
facility.
Yeah. So from the conceptual designs, it looks pretty industrial and not very welcoming. I mean, to be fair, they have not done full designs on any of these things yet. But just looking at the footprint of it as it stands right now, it's not very welcoming. And you know, this is the station in downtown Tigard, and it just doesn't seem like they're putting as much effort into making the best of this as some of the other sites.
So if I remember right, the last thing I heard was there would have been a parking structure there with shops on the bottom. Is that just completely out of line there for my thought process? Or was that terminus?
I have not seen anything like that in designs recently. Or yeah. So.
Lonnie, that is something that was talked about. This is Corrine, and prior to Lindsay serving on the Southwest Corridor Advisory Committee, I did as part of like representing the Town Center Advisory Commission, and it feels like this station we've kind of gone backwards actually, and the last design I saw, it was strictly surface level. Okay. And the safety, the building, the connection from this new what's supposed to be like a transit-oriented development area to the downtown Tigard area. So that placemaking component, I would second as something that really needs to be emphasized. Of course, the safety of the crossing will be important, but also the fact that it does not appear to be supportive of the level of density we would expect in a transit-oriented area. And the fact that it's the site's dominated by that operations center. I think those are all important points to document and put in a letter. And thank you so much, Lindsay, for taking the lead on that, and Lonnie for helping out. I think it's important we continue to advocate for those things. And I wonder if Councillor Goodhouse, if he's still with us, if he might have any thoughts.
Yeah, just trying to unmute. Yeah, as I've said before, kind of keep hitting on this topic, that it's good to stay on this. I think the last presentation that we had at council, and I don't know if you were part of that, Dave, or saw that, they did move a little bit. We did have a little traction as far as the big thing we were trying to focus on also was some TOD, or transit-oriented development. And they hadn't really planned any of that, but now there's more of a plan for that. But we still have to discuss the parking structure part, or parking, whether or not it's on the other side or where that's at, or what's going to happen with that. So we're feeling the same way, that we're not really being heard or listened by with TriMet, and they're kind of moving forward. And so we're trying to figure out what we need to do to get them to listen more or follow with what we want from our city, especially that's going to be a main stop right next to getting into downtown, and everything can be built out. So the more pressure that can be put on sending a letter to TriMet, to Metro, to the Washington County Commission, even if we send it to the feds or anything like that, saying that we're not happy with what's going on, anything we can try to do to get this turned around before we hit that, even if even if there's something that said that, to Metro or TriMet, in order for us to support the Get Moving 2020 measure, that we need this to be done, or otherwise we can't support that. That might be an angle to play as well. And that might be a discussion too. I don't know if people have heard what's going on with the Get 2020 measure that will be make or break if this project happens anyways. I don't know if you want me to give everyone an update on that, or if people are aware of what the most recent news is on that.
Please update us.
Yeah, update would be nice.
So I think it was a week and a half ago. My time frame's off a little bit. It's COVID time frame, but Metro referred it to the ballot. The funding measure is going to be 4.3 billion, I think it is. And they're playing around with a couple of different ideas of how to have the funding, whether it be vehicle registration, gas tax, or everything like that. They finally settled on doing a full employer tax. And so that hasn't made Nike or Intel happy. And I think all the chambers of commerce in the area and metro region are not happy either. And I think they'll come out against it. And one of the biggest parts that happened a few days, or actually the day of referring it to the ballot, is they exempted government workers from the employer tax, or government agencies. And so it came out in the press that what's good enough for everyone else is not good enough, isn't good enough, or it's good enough to have everyone else pay for it, but government doesn't have to pay for it. And later finding out is Metro doesn't have the taxing capability to tax government agencies. So what's being put out there is 15,000 employees will not be taxed as part of funding for this the Get Moving 2020 measure. And they kind of dropped the ball on really reaching out or communicating with the public on that. So I think there's going to be a lot of hurdles to overcome. There's still going to be that part of overcoming why they didn't maybe look at it more in depth. I think Metro's legal at the last moment really let them know that they couldn't do that. And so rather than hitting pause and reaching out to all those government agencies and seeing if they could sign on and still pay it or do something, at least for optics, that wasn't done. and there's going to be a big, huge opposition campaign against it from Intel, Nike, the chambers of commerce, and everything like that, because it's a employer tax only. Employers will be paying a tax on all their employees. So we'll have to see how that happens, because if this doesn't pass in November, then the light rail project's dead until a funding measure can be passed.
So thanks for that update. This is Crane. I had not been aware of the rationale that you're sharing with us about why government agencies were exempted. I was thinking it might have something to do with the fact that, you know, government agencies are generally funded by our tax dollars, and this would just be a way of shifting tax dollars from paying for government services to paying for transportation services. But it sounds like it wasn't even necessarily a kind of conceptual argument behind it, but strictly a legalistic limitation that had maybe not been contemplated until they were really coming down to the wire. So I think that that's good information for people who are maybe talking about this measure with their friends and families and people out in the community, to help other people understand why it's structured this way. It isn't necessarily to provide certain people special treatment, but it's just because Metro, the way it's set up, it does not have the legal authority to tax other government agencies. So I think that's good information to have. Thank you so much for sharing.
Oh yeah, you're welcome. And so, and I think that with that being said, I don't know how you word a letter, but you know, if we say maybe that we want more of a focus on the Hall Station of what we want, in order for us to really support, or for this committee to support the measure, might be something that helps with Metro, or just anywhere we keep putting the pressure on there, because we're, as a city and city staff, we're really trying to work with TriMet, but they're trying to do everything they can to not fulfill or do the minimal amount they need to with that stop, and that's not acceptable in the council's eye, and this committee obviously doesn't think it's acceptable, and staff doesn't. So we need to do something to put more pressure on them, and the sooner we do it, the better. I mean, every week goes by, there's more and more decisions being made, and we're getting closer to final decisions being made on a lot of different topics.
Thank you for that update, John.
Yes.
All right, so I'll follow up with Lindsay, Lonnie, and Corinne. I didn't mean to leave you out of the group there. I forgot that you also served on the CAC, so thank you very much for your work there. And if you're interested in providing feedback on the first drafts, that'd be great as well. But we'll get back to the committee with the letter, hopefully here in the next week or two, and then turn it back around to TriMet. I had two last things to share with you. One is the Hall Boulevard jurisdictional transfer work that we're working with ODOT on. So tangentially related to Southwest Corridor, we've been initiating conversations with ODOT, and we've got the internal go-ahead by city leadership and elected officials to move forward with conversations on taking over ownership of Hall Boulevard within Tigard from ODOT. And so we had a kickoff meeting with ODOT last month, and we'll have a follow-up meeting here in a couple of weeks to start putting together a memorandum of understanding that would lead to an agreement between the two agencies for Tigard to take it over. And there's definitely some big decisions that need to be made. Typically how these things work is that ODOT will relinquish control of the roadway that they own to a local jurisdiction and provide an amount of funding and or capital work to bring the asset up to what they call a state of good repair, so that when we inherit it, it's not as big of a liability for the city. So that'll be an interesting process and one that I'm sure TTAC would like to stay involved in. Any questions about Hall Boulevard? Okay. The last one on my list is the Safe Routes to School infrastructure grant. So I'm working with Tina and a couple of our public works staff to put together 2 Safe Routes to School infrastructure grants that would be bringing capital improvements to the area around Metzger Elementary School on Locust Street, and then Templeton Elementary, and that would be the O'Mara and McDonald intersection. It also intersects with 98th, and then improvements including sidewalk infill to Sattler and the 96th intersection area. So we can share more with you. We'll actually have the grant application turned in by the end of August, and I think we'd also be looking for TTAC to provide a letter of support for that grant application. So I'll likely work with Ruth on that if the committee is okay with it.
It would seem like a good idea to support it. Any concerns from anybody?
Let's do it.
That's the attitude. All right. Okay, that's all of my updates and info shares.
Okay, does anybody else have any other things they wanted to share?
I have a question related to Safer Routes to Schools. You know, with schools being closed, I mean, is there any programming that's being delayed, deferred, or kind of readjusted to other parts, like this grant funding for future seeking projects, as opposed to stuff that can be done right now this year?
Good question, Alan. I don't want to give the impression that this is going to happen this year. We'll apply for the grant. It's due August 31st, but the actual capital work, probably the way we're looking at scheduling, is going to happen sometime about 3 to 5 years out from now. So it's not an immediate project, and hopefully 3 to 5 years from now, kids are going to be back in classrooms.
Yeah, I would say too. No, I
yeah.
know, like, is there any kind of like beginning of year stuff that could be kind of reallocated? My understanding is the grant is really for kind of Tina's time at this point, not necessarily like funding for actual projects or whatnot. Is that correct understanding for it? So
yeah, no, thank you for raising that. It's a really good question, and I know that sometimes this stuff can get a little complex or complicated, but just to make sure we're all on the same page here. So the grant that I'm talking about is separate to Tina's program. So the grant.
I'm not asking about Tina's programming. I'm separate topic altogether. Is what I'm asking about.
Well, just for the benefit of the whole group. Sorry, motorcycle passing here. Just for the benefit of the whole group. So the infrastructure grant that we're going after is provided through ODOT, and that's those dollars are very specific with what you can do with them, and they're just for capital work within the right of way. The question about our internal Tigard Safe Routes to School program is really an interesting one. It's something that we're well, I don't want to say struggling with right now, but we're having to really rethink what that program means right now. And Tigard is not the only jurisdiction that's facing this. Basically, every Safe Routes to School program in the state and the country, for that matter, is having to retool their programs because such a significant part of the programs is on education, safety training, working with the schools, and a lot of hands-on person-to-person type work that cannot be done now. So Tina has really kind of refocused her work to focus on helping us get this grant. application in for the infrastructure grant because the reality is we're just not able to do or able to conduct any of the education or safety activities that we would typically be doing, you know, in the summer and the fall. It's definitely a big challenge, and obviously not something we were anticipating, but we do have other work that we need to be accomplishing, and so she's able to kind of reprioritize towards that work.
So is there any kind of putting the finger on the pulse, any thought about the longevity of Safer Route to Schools programs being affected by this, or does it seem like it's still, generally speaking, a program that's around to stay for once things hopefully get back to normal?
So we, in the Portland metro region, we get our funding through Metro, and it's a federal, it's actually CMAQ money. It's called Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality money that the federal government gives out to metropolitan planning organizations. And so I know that Metro staff are in discussions. I've not heard, I haven't heard anything yet about changes to the way that money is allocated. Metro has some flexibility in what they do with that money. And so if Metro wants to keep Safe Routes to School going, they can do that. But I think at least for right now, the programs are not meeting some of their objectives around education and safety training and that sort of thing. So I can't tell you what it's going to look like next year. We still have our current grant goes through July 31st of 2022. So we will have a program in place, and as long as we have the program in place with a Safe Routes to School coordinator, we'll be able to focus on work that we are able to do. And just to throw out one idea that we've been batting around is to potentially expand the Streets for People program to schools once students are allowed back in classrooms. But again, that might be next year. We just don't know yet.
I would venture to bet that will be the case next year.
Yeah. So yeah, really good question, Alan. I'm glad that you're thinking about it. It's something that we've been thinking a lot about.
Any other questions or comments?
Dave, I've got a quick question on the 121st Avenue. What's the, how is it doing in terms of the timeline?
So I think it's, I just saw the 90% drawings yesterday, and I think based off of that milestone, I think that construction, I can't recall if it's 21 or 22. It might kind of cross over both years because it's such a big project.
Okay, I was under the impression that it was the signs that they posted said it was already supposed to have begun construction, but just because they go by them every day, it doesn't mean I'm right.
Well, when they say begin construction, you'd be surprised at some of the little things that qualifies for beginning construction, but I wouldn't anticipate it to be finished until probably 22.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, it sounds like, Dave, we have a pretty good agenda for the September meeting.
Yeah,
with the Santa Creek Regional Trail and the Parks Master Plan.
Yeah.
And maybe October we can look at the GIS report and the 121st Project Manager or the 79th Avenue redesign.
Yeah, I think both of those would be good topics, and I think probably in October we'll have a TSP topic as well. And just as a info for the group, I'm going to be out of down in September. So I'm going to have Tegan lead our meeting in September.
Okay. So we're meeting September 2nd.
That's right.
Are we planning on 6:30?
Yeah, let's correct that. Actually, as we're operating remotely, I'm happy to schedule the meeting for either 6 or 6:30. So I don't know what the best way to make a decision on that is. We could agree right now, or we could send out an email communication, poll people.
Does anybody feel strongly about one time or another?
I guess I'm maybe not understanding why we would need to change the time. This is Crane.
So leave it at 6:30?
I think
I'd
the
also
idea was that
prefer
we don't
6:30.
need to commute as much anymore, so maybe we could
Yeah.
start earlier. Yeah. So I'm okay either way. This is Ben.
I got to be honest. I liked the 6 o'clock one, even though it was a miss.
It's a very small private meeting.
And it was, the agenda was from last month or whatever. I really liked the start at 6 o'clock versus 6:30. Just my input.
6:30 is better for me.
I like
I-
6:30 too.
Yeah, it might be better to do an email survey since not all of us are here.
Yeah, well, I think most likely we'll probably end up keeping it at 6:30 because that is the traditional time and that's what we've got advertised everywhere. So, but we can follow up with an email. I think Joe and I can manage that with the group.
All right, that sounds good. So
Okay.
meeting adjourned, and best wishes to everybody. Stay healthy. And we'll talk more